There are many questions this morning on what a second Trump presidency will mean for the nation's political, social, and economic future. This morning, we are joined by Ethan Porter, an associate professor of media, public affairs, and political science at the George Washington University. Good morning to you. We appreciate you being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Looking back at this election, I want to ask you what some of your biggest takeaways are.
Sure. I think Donald Trump won a decisive victory in a way that maybe surprised some people. I think people like Donald Trump. That's the first thing people need to remember. The second thing people need to take away, and that I'm taking away, is that elections are unpredictable. You think that after a not particularly successful first Trump term, he might have experienced more turbulence in his reelection bid or in his latest election bid, and he didn't. He experienced great gains across all subgroups in ways that I think surprised a lot of people. And now we'll just have to sort of sit down and wait and see what happens when he returns to the White House.
Yeah, and when it comes to Democrats and this defeat, obviously this is not the outcome that they wanted. What do you think some of the mistakes, are that were made along the way and what went wrong for them?
Sure. Kamala Harris, the Democratic Party, they were always going to be fighting an uphill battle. Fundamentally, Joe Biden's administration was not particularly not particularly popular. So, we can't sit back and say, well, if Kamala had done one thing differently, maybe she would have won. There are a lot of things different that would have to have happened differently for her to have won. She would have had to have run different messages. She would have had to maybe selected a different vice presidential nominee. But any one decision likely doesn't explain her defeat. People like Donald Trump. They didn't like Joe Biden, and frankly, they didn't really like his vice president.
Yeah, and how do Democrats kind of regroup from all of this, rebrand, and move forward?
Yeah, it's going to be a slow rebuilding process, to be sure. There's no quick fix here. There's no magical candidate waiting in the wings. Democrats are going to have to grind, and they're going to have to work hard, and they're going to have to work hard on winning back the votes of those voters who I think they were counting on, who formed the backbone of the Obama coalition and who, launched Joe Biden to the White House in 2020. So it's going to be a slow burn for the Democrats for the next few years.
Yeah, and I know you touched on this just a little bit, but talk a little bit more about voter turnout in the election, demographics, any surprising trends that you saw.
Sure. I think everyone was surprised, including me, but not limited to me, by the amount of support Trump garnered among non-white voters, younger voters. Trump gained among all groups. And why did that happen? I think, part of it is Trump's campaign made a concerted effort to appeal to them from the beginning, right? As soon as Donald Trump lost in 2020, his team was adamant on winning over voters who they'd repelled in the first in 2020. And I think that's to their credit as a campaign. There's no one single explanation for why those gains occurred. But the thing to remember is they occurred across pretty much all groups. All groups went for Donald Trump in 2024, more so than they had in 2020.
And before we let you go, I also want to ask you, this is really a big question for a lot of people. What's next here? We know the economy drove a lot of voters out, but what are finances potentially going to look like for Americans under a second Trump administration with some of these new taxes and tariffs that are proposed?
Sure. I think the big question is, will Trump actually try and follow through on his policy ideas that would raise prices for Americans, right? So if he follows through on tariffs, that will likely increase the price of goods. And of course, the irony is it's increases in the price of goods that probably led to his election, this past week in the first place. I think it remains to be seen whether he follows through on tariffs or if he makes a sort of show of it. It's possible he'll do something, sort of theatrical and performative, but ultimately not substantive on tariffs. But, he could also go big on tariffs, and our prices at the grocery store will increase as a result.
Okay, lots to keep our eye on for sure. Ethan, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.